All right, it's been 3 years since the greenhouse was built, and I figured I'd give a 3-year update on how the build has withstood the elements and then my thoughts and experiences on it. So, if you look at the greenhouse, how it stands today, it's pretty much identical to what it was built 3 years ago. I have done nothing with the greenhouse structurally since whatever I put in initially. So the foundation has held up nicely. So those are 2x10s butted up against each other to form a 8x16. The panels are just pinched in within the base, and then just pipe tubing, pipe insulation to just stop it from shredding out the tarp. The panels themselves have pretty much stayed in place. They have not moved. Any sort of weather has kept them together. And the back wall has retained its integrity. I just put some paint on it just to stop the weather and all that from degrading it. So that has held up very nicely. The tarp itself, very nice. It's in its 3rd year. I think it's a 4-year tarp. No holes in it. Held up to the elements of time. The only thing that I would truly change, maybe, is how the furring strips are tied into the foundation that ties into the tarp. You can see it. A lot of the goo gets collected in behind there. Maybe I would kind of put it on the side here and have a little notches into it so it allows for the water to drain off. A lot of the crap and water collect into there. The only other option I've changed that would affect the outside is changing out the door. Since this is a theoretically closed system, any sort of, or not having any sort of airflow and water in here tends to cause a lot of unnecessary growth with your seed trays and everything. So I'll eventually switch out one that has a screen on it instead of a tarp. Inside, as I mentioned before, everything that I built into it remains the same. I still have the garden beds. Those have held up. I have the seed tray holder table. I have the cold frames, and then I have the table itself. And then you have the window. So everything structurally has maintained throughout the 3 years. I probably wouldn't change anything. Everything that went into it has remained the same and provided some nice use to it. I would say from a functional point of view, it really hasn't lived up to what I thought it was. Originally, we had thought about at least using it 6 months out of the year, maybe even year round, to have growing. But the beds themselves are fairly small, maybe 3x7. Certainly you can grow with it, but not to the level that would make it very useful. And the way that I have my greenhouse situated, the sun kind of goes left to right like that. It's in between trees. So during the seasons you have crazy temperature swings. So in the winter you don't get much sun. And then any sort of sun that you do get in the winter and in the summer, it goes from 0 to 120 degrees in here. So a lot of the crops just didn't grow as very nicely. So you can see from my garden beds, from a functional point of view, I only have a quarter left of dirt, and I really don't even grow anything on there. Right now it's just collecting everything. Everything has really just been concentrated on seed trays and growing. So instead of something being 6 to 12 years or 6 to 12 months, it only really used 1 to 2 months at best. And it's really just support everything with the seed tray. So you see the seed trays all in the cold frames. These are all the summer ones. So they'll stay in the cold frames in the cold at night. And then you bring them back out onto the tables just so they have, just so they dry out and get a little more heat when they feel the sun. So it works. Would I build it again? Maybe, but it certainly hasn't lived up to my expectations. You really can't grow much in here, or at least grow to a point that it is worth it, unless you just want to truly use it as a hobby. For me, it's just too small of a scale, and the weather extremes are too extreme to support any sort of feasible growth throughout the month. So I probably wouldn't build it again, but that's just because it doesn't fit for my purpose. I think it's a nice to have, and it's certainly a nice to have for me because I do all of my planting primarily through transplanting, and so I have dozens of seed trays every single season, and that's just something I don't want to put in the house, so I can keep it out here. but pretty much for the other 10 months of the year, it's just a storage place for anything to do with seeding or watering or anything else that I can't fit in. So when thinking about it, it is a cool project. It is a low value or a low cost, high value sort of proposition that I think can be of use to people. But I would say for me, it hasn't really provided the full potential. And I think it's just because the circumstances of where I put it, as well as what I kind of have grown into on the farm. So it's something to think about when you build these sorts of things. I think structurally they will retain, they will hold up to the elements. They're structurally sound if you build it so. But from a functional point of view, you really have to make it worth to what you're trying to achieve on your end. So something to think about. Hope that helps you guys.